Good to welcome everyone to our third biocontrol session of Biosecurity Bonanza. Today we'll move away from weed biocontrol and we will discuss invasive invertebrates in New Zealand. More precisely, Bob Brown will explain us why using a classical biocontrol approach for paper wasps should be considered. Bob is an entomologist specializing in social insects and chemical ecology. Some of you would have heard that one of Bob's recent successes was the introduction of a new biocontrol agent for the European wasps, which was released just last summer. Now a quick note for the audience. Anyone can put their questions in the chat. We'll manage the questions at the end of the presentation. And if we do run out of time, any unanswered questions will be handled offline, so everyone will get a response. This session is now being recorded, and all recordings will be available on our website within the next week. If anyone would like to connect with Bob on project ideas or future opportunities, they can contact him via our website and searching his name. Now I'll hand over to Bob.
Thank you, Arno. So yeah, I've also got my email address here on the front, and yeah, it's pretty easy to find me on the public website. So yeah, talking about the feasibility for biocontrol of paper wasps. This is essentially some work that I did a couple of years ago as part of an EnviroLink to suss out the possibilities for biocontrol for the Nelson City Council. So what are paper wasps? So paper wasps are primitively social wasps that we've got here. We currently have 3 species in New Zealand. We've got the Australian paper wasp, Polistes humilis, that is thought to have arrived in around the 1800s. We've got Polistes chinensis that showed up, was first found in the 1979, and then we've got a most recent one is Polistes dominula, which is from Europe. It's also called the European paper wasp. I've also added here on the bottom right, we've got Polistes olivaceus, which is probably one of the most widespread Polistes or paper wasps throughout the Pacific Islands, and it has shown up many times. And Harris, back in 1979, described the nests being built, and I think it was just outside of Dunedin. So they keep showing up. They've so far failed to establish, but with climate change, that might be something that we need to look out for. So I mostly work on Vespula, and I'm only now just starting to dip my toes into the Polistes waters, so to speak. And so this is useful for me, is to kind of compare what's the differences and similarities between these. So with Vespula, we've got truly social wasps. So you've got a defined physical caste. So a queen is very easy to distinguish from workers, mostly just by size in these species. With Polistes, they're primitively eusocial, so they're still social. They've got a queen, and the queen is the one that sets up the nest. But once there's other workers there, they can challenge the queen. So you get this dynamic where it's almost like a dominance-based, like a pack of dogs, I guess, would be something similar. And the colony sizes, at least with the species that I'm talking about today, the colony sizes of Polistes is relatively small, usually less than a couple hundred, but some of them can get pretty large, up to 500 individuals. But with Vespula, it's a whole different order of magnitude. We've got the 2 species that we have here, Vulgaris and Germanica. They both often in this invaded range of New Zealand, they can reach much larger colony sizes than they would in their native range. And it's average about 3,000 to 4,000 individuals. But when you get these multi-season nests like you can have in Germanica, it can be, you know, tens of thousands and upwards of 100,000 of those guys flying around. Other differences. So I'm not really sure why they're called paper wasps and Vespula or not. They both use paper to create their nests. But the maybe it's just because as people came across them, they would see the paper wasps out because they do nest in the open. Down here on the bottom, I've got I think it's a Polistes chinensis nest in a lovely little spot here on Banks Peninsula that so it's just on a tree, and they'd like those little hoops that they put around tree plantings because it's a nice little microclimate where, you know, they're protected from the wind a little bit. And so they're out in the open and often kind of around the knee height area or height. So if you're walking through bush, you might bump into them knee to waist height. So they're always above ground and often found on human structures. And so that's like this adaptation here to a human structure, but also under the eaves of houses or as I'll show you in a second, just under, you know, all kinds of man-made objects. With Vespula, they're found in cavities, so underground or in trees. They also are found in attics of homes, that sort of thing. But usually it's in an enclosed space, and it's always surrounded by a paper envelope, which they use to regulate the temperatures. Unlike Vespula, the Polistes are generalist predators, so they almost exclusively feed on live prey. And that's one of the reasons why they are unable to be controlled with the poison baits. Whereas with Vespula, yes, they're really excellent predators, but they're also scavengers because they need to get that protein to feed such a large colony. But they're also nectar feeders, both of them. So with the Vespula, that's why they can be a good target for the protein baits. Range-wise, so as far as I know, they're spread throughout the North Island and are still spreading throughout the South Island. And basically, the Australian paper wasp is almost exclusively, for now, a North Island species, whereas the Asian paper wasp and the European paper wasp are both spreading through downwards. And yeah, we get both here. And Vespula, of course, is from top to bottom, so they're spread through. So speaking of the preference for human structures, it pays, when these things are around, it pays to look when you're out on your deck and wanting to sit down in a chair. So this is at my mother-in-law's place in Blenheim, and this is just a deck chair. And I did look because I actually saw this Polistes worker or queen come back to the nest, so I needed to look. And then it's just like, okay, this is how people get stung. They sit on these chairs and they're, you know, then they disturb the colony and they get stung right in their bum. So that's one of those. Yeah, that's the problem with these. It's not that they're so aggressive. It's just that they nest in these really awkward spots that make really push the human and wasp interactions, and it can be dangerous. So on to the impacts. Like I'm saying, probably the most obvious thing is the human health, and they do have a tendency to nest around the human structures, like I said, and that will increase the risk of stings. And with stings comes the potential for an allergic reaction called anaphylaxis, where your body overreacts and you go into shock, and it can be fatal if it's not treated properly. And in a survey back in the early 90s, Polistes accounted for almost the majority of the stings of Aucklanders. Just most likely that was just because of the proximity of people to the nests, and that was quite a bit before the European paper wasp had showed up. Environmentally, there's other impacts such as generalist predation on a wide range of arthropods, but usually, generally speaking, paper wasps tend to go for caterpillars, and that's because they're soft, squidgy, lots of bags of, bag of food for these things to take back to their nests, and they're really good at finding caterpillars. Ask anybody that has tried to rear some monarch butterflies or something like that in their back garden. As soon as these guys find them, they just keep coming back to them. They can get up to 200 nests per hectare and up in Northland, and in these areas that equates to about 1 kilogram of insect prey removed per hectare. And just like what I've said with the Vespula, there's no native social wasps in New Zealand, so these species have evolved without that drive to defend themselves or to better enable competition with the Polistes. Another kind of, I wasn't sure if this is an environmental or economic impact, but they are also known to predate on weed biocontrol agents, such as like the Honshu white admiral and a lot of other biocontrol agents. And that predation could obviously slow or even hinder any establishment of those weed biocontrol agents. So why are they invasive in New Zealand? The main reason is that we've got no natives, and their life cycle is with that the mated gyne able to withstand a long overwintering diapause. That's just the perfect scenario to travel, and so they can just go into any goods, hunker down at wintertime in the northern hemisphere, and come to show up in New Zealand even a month later, and they wake up and it's like, oh, this is perfect, and then they start their nest. And since they've already mated, they don't have to look for mates when they emerge in a new environment, and so from there they can start their colonies. And so that's already set them up. So as long as they get that first foothold in there, then they're away essentially. The biology, they're with them being social as well as generalist predators, they're really good at learning new food sources and identifying new prey, as well as different nectar sources. And then we've got the New Zealand environment, of course. We've got mild conditions and lots of sugar around at least in the honeydew, like the beech forest. But there's also other honeydew that's produced in some of the other trees. Drawing a blank on like Kanuka and Manuka. They both have scales that feed on them. And of course, no natural enemies, because nothing has had that evolution, the need to evolve to feed on these guys. So why am I thinking biocontrol is such a great option? Well, currently, as I mentioned, there's not really an available poison bait like we have for Vespula, and so the only real option is direct poisoning of the nests as you come across them with an insecticide, or to use a sweet bait that you put out, and that's a pretty popular thing in the States, or often in people's back gardens, or you'll see them particularly in Europe or the UK, where they have traps out at cafes or something like that, just to pull the wasps away from the diners. But those are not specific and will catch just as many honeybees or bumblebees or other non-target species as would, you would expect. I mean, there's just, yeah. The trapping efficiency is very low with those sweet bait traps. One good thing is that Polistes is a very well-studied genus, and because of their primitive eusociality and the open nesting behavior of these guys, they've been used to learn about how sociality has evolved in social insects. And so there's a lot of knowledge about rearing these in captivity. There's a lot of knowledge on what healthy colony dynamics look like. And through that, we've also got quite a bit of literature on the natural enemies. And that ranges from birds to parasitoids to all kinds of different fungi and that sort of thing. But I'm mostly interested in organisms that I can say that eats this, so that to simplify things, because there's with some of the parasitoids, you start to get into these gray areas where they can be facultative hyperparasitoids, and that really kind of could be to cloud the issue essentially. And like I mentioned, they're easy to observe. So if we want to do manipulations of host testing and that sort of thing, you don't have to dig up a nest to see what's going on. You can sit a few meters away and look at it, or watch it through a pair of binoculars, and you're safe as long as you don't disturb them. And biocontrols usually, as Simon talked about yesterday, it's usually the most efficient use of the funding. Yes, you have a cost up front, but that kind of eliminates the ongoing costs as long as they're knocked down to a level that we feel is acceptable. And here's just the kind of normal, what you would expect of biocontrol. You've got your pest populations up here. You introduce your biocontrol. It takes a little bit of time, and then you've got this this normal natural enemy chasing its host. That tied in prey predator relationship. But here, this is just a general model. But what is a damaging threshold or damage threshold? We don't really know what that is at this stage, but that's something that you could negotiate with communities to see how they feel. But ideally, biocontrol on its own would be able to keep it below a damaging threshold, so they're not a problem to whoever, whatever the community is. So what is in New Zealand that's related to these Polistes? So we've got, like I said, 3 species of Polistes. We've got Vespula germanica and vulgaris, and there's no native species. So that presents an opportunity of being able to think a little bit differently of how you would normally approach a biocontrol program. So that this way we can kind of widen the scope of host specificity. So if we've got natural enemies that are specific to just the genus of Polistes, that could be a way to increase biotic resistance to possible new incursions while attacking what's already here. And yeah, so that's one of the things that I think that is really exciting about this is, because we don't have the native species here to worry about. Of course, this might not work in other areas where there are native paper wasps. So yeah, that's something to think about. So with the lit review I did for the EnvironLink, I found a lot out there, and even this is almost cherry picked. So there's a lot of different natural enemies from 4 different orders of insect. The Diptera is a little bit sparse and not very well studied. but there's definitely quite a few there. The Hymenoptera, again, the saying is that every insect species has at least one parasitoid wasp that will feed on it. So there's tons out there, mostly from the ichneumoniid and eulophids. And to flip the script, we've got Lepidoptera, so we've got moths that are actually eating the wasps. So they it's just one of those really amazing things. It's like, oh, that's so cool how that evolved to just kind of change over. So we've got some crambids and pyralids that are obligate predators or parasites, nest parasites, if you want to think of them that way. But then there's also tineids that if you think of tineids, it's like the moths that you find in your house that feed on your wool carpet or on your wool clothes. So they actually attack the structure of the nest, and that damage causes the wasps to need to abandon that. And then we've got Strepsiptera that are obligate. All of them are obligate parasitoids, and there's tons of species, and most of them are species specific. So just to quickly go through these, I know I'm running out of time before I start getting messages from Arno. So with Diptera, we've got two named genera from the tachinids, and there's a native species over in Australia and a Camptomaya, and then there's also a Eubisporia that I think is from Europe that attacks Polistes dominula. From the Hymenoptera, we've got the Eulophides, and within that family, we've got Elasmus. There's 4 species of those, and then we've got the named species, E. schmidti. Try not to just butcher that. Those have been documented from Polistes dominula nests in Ukraine, from Rosina, where she found that 8 to 43% of the nests were infested with those. One of the potential benefits is that of this group is that they have a very wide host range, and of the 4 species, they attack 10 Polistes species. So that could be one of those beneficial kind of host plasticity that we can use to our advantage in the southern hemisphere here. Ichneumonids. So we've got Latibulus, and if those of you familiar with the Spicophaga that was introduced for Vespula, it's along the same lines. And here's a picture of it, and it's interesting, evolutionarily how similar these look to the Polistes, their hosts, because that it's an open nest and they have to look like their hosts, otherwise they'll get detected. So there's 5 species of those, and these can really hammer nests. Apparently, Rosina, the same researcher, found that up to 80% of Polistes dominula nests were hit by these, and 1/3 of the nests that were parasitized had more than 10% of the cells were infested with the larvae of these guys. And then we've got Pachysemoides, which I couldn't find any records of them attacking any of the 3 species that we currently have here. But again, they have this really wide host range, and it seems that any Polistes that co-occur with it are going to be targeted by these guys. So that could be, an interesting new association if we want to think of it that way. And then the really amazing Lepidopterans, we've got Crambidae, and so of those, we've got 2 species of Chalcoella. There's with the Lepidopterans, things are always moving, and so this used to be the Pegasalis used to be a different genus, and even Crambidae used to be a different family. But so we've got these very unassuming moths that fly to the nests and attack them at night, lay their eggs, and this is the damage that they can do. This is a nest that, funnily enough, I found at my brother's house. This isn't of the two species that we've got, or of the three species that we've got here, but this is a native species in North America. I think it was a nest from Polistes exclemens. This is in Houston, and they had abandoned this nest. And you can see all of these different little cocoons in there. So these can be extremely damaging, up to 40, well, from 40 to 70+% of Polistes had been seen with the Chalcoella iphetalis. And then we've got, so the iphetalis is mostly in North America, kind of from the Midwest to the west. And then you've got Pegasalis, which is the kind of the east down through the Mediterranean. And these also have a wide range of hosts, and these can be extremely damaging. Up to 50% of cells were attacked, and some of these measurements around Missouri. And I don't have a citation for it here, but this C. pegasalis is also implicated in eradicating Polistes from islands in the West Indies, if you will. And that's a bit of conjecture, but they were kind of documenting as the Polistes got established in the island, and then all of a sudden more disappeared. Then we've got the strepsipterans, which are often species specific. There are a few that have a little bit of a plastic range, but these are still, yeah, they're pretty difficult to figure out. So there's still a lot to learn about these guys. Oops. Oh, giving you guys previews. So in summary, there's a lot out there. I'm only presenting a few here today. And I think that with the potential, we've got some great options that should be investigated. Like I mentioned, with New Zealand not having any native species of social wasps, the host specificity, the wide host specificity, even at a subfamily level, should be viewed as a positive attribute, where we can balance host specificity with the increase of biotic resistance of new incursions. Skipping down, this could also be a way to increase the cost effectiveness of a program. So if you've got one really good agent that is not that specific but knocks down all of your targets, then that could prevent you from having to find individual ones for each of the targets. And so the ability to attack multiple species would not only be useful for us in New Zealand, but also through the Pacific Islands, which we're hearing more and more about, where Polistes are seen as a human health hazard there as well. So the big question is there enough demand to drive some funding for this? And hopefully, I think with this model, it would be a great opportunity to develop a biocontrol program with the community, so that we can demonstrate, steps from scratch all the way through to doing a release. And always funding is a big question. So it looks like I've taken up the whole time. So I'll hand over to Arno. I'm sorry, I just keep talking.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, it was certainly very interesting, and it seems like there is a lot of work still to happen. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of, I mean, that's only just some of the, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's just,
yeah, exactly.
There's so much out there.
They will certainly keep you busy for the next wee while.
Yeah.
So we'll jump directly to the questions in the chat. First question from Francis. That was part of the study on the impact of the paper wasps. We had an info about 1 kg of insect of prey per hectare. And Francis is asking, what's the time frame? Is it per season, per year, per?
I think that's per season. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to go back, and it's been quite a while since I read that those papers. But yeah, that's usually what it is it's over a season.
Yeah, that'll be my
while the
understanding as
wasps are
well.
active. Yeah.
Another question from Ronnie. Out of the impressive buffet of natural enemies, do you have any you would prioritize for pursuing first? Surely yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've got favorites. The latibulus, which is the ichneummonid, is very compelling, as well as the two moths that I presented. I think that those could be very good in concert together. Yeah, so those would be my two front runners if we could
Yeah,
get some funding for it. Yeah.
That probably linked to another comment from Gabby. Would lawn care consider pursuing multiple biocontrol agents simul at the same time?
Yes. Yeah,
So it seems
definitely. Why
like
not? Yeah.
EPA can approve quite a few biocontrol agents. So yeah, we could potentially, if we have the funding, do more than just one.
Yeah, I think that there would have to be a good reason for that, and that would probably be along the lines of the ranges that the biocontrols, if we're looking at ones that are widely have a wider host range, then I think that yeah, I don't see a reason why not, but yeah, I think if we could match the climate or habitat type, then yeah, the more the better. As far as I'm concerned, as far as knocking something down, because I mean, there is the possibility of outcompeting, but what I've seen, at least with the vespula, is that the more that are present in there and in a nest, the smaller the nest will end up being. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of things popping up here.
One question from Holly Cox. Any potential issue with bringing a biocontrol agent that may cross the ditch and become an issue for the native paper wasp in Australia?
I'm not sure. That can be a worry, but again, it's kind of up to their biosecurity as well. But yeah, some of the flies, some of those are actually Australian that I mentioned, the tachinids. So that's another possibility. So I think that it would be worth, collaborating with Australian researchers to see what's actually there that could be used as well, because there might be something else that's, these related to these species that have been well studied in North America, but in Australia and understudied. So yeah, that'd be a way to prevent that, basically, work around it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we are pretty much running out of time now, so thank you very much, Bob. I don't think there are any questions left unanswered, which is great. So hope to see you all again tomorrow for another With Biocontrol session, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks.